When Descendants first premiered on Disney Channel, it became the fifth most watched cable TV movie. Disney Channel really pushed it leading up to the premiere with a book release, press tours, and of course, a red carpet premiere. Descendants 2 was nearly as successful. And then there was Descendants 3. Descendants 3 premiered on August 2nd, 2019. They did all the pushes for it that they could. They had the book release and signings, they had the press tours, and on July 22nd, they were set to have the red carpet premiere. Disney Channel respectfully canceled. On July 6th, 2019, Cameron Boyce, the actor who had portrayed Carlos over the past 3 movies, died at the age of 20. Dove Cameron, Sophia Carson, and Boo Boo Stewart have all stated many times since then that they would not do another Descendants movie without Cameron. And so Descendants 3 is the last, with the 4 core villain kids. Mal's Wedding to Ben, a small animation that premiered on Disney Plus in 2021, is the ending to Mal's story. So how is it that the ending begins?
We open on a deserted bank. A grungy street kid zooms by on a skateboard. She's pretty, but doesn't know it.
Oh, I'm pretty sure she knows it.
Actually, we open on the Isle of the Lost with Hades. That was a different Dove Cameron role, though it is briefly mentioned in the first Isle of the Lost book. Back to Hades, this Greek god, older brother of Poseidon and Zeus, is portrayed in many different ways among media. Disney's portrayal of him, with his blue fire hair and his little minions, Pain and Panic, has him as a villain. Therefore, Descendants' portrayal of him has him as one of the many living on the Isle of the Lost. And just as much of the many, he wants to get off. So, on the morning Escape from the Isle of the Lost starts out, Hades finds his ember, a mythical item the Hades of Disney's animated Hercules was never shown to have. Thinking he can use the ember to escape the isle, Hades commands it to break down the barrier. But the ember doesn't work. There is no magic, he is no god. Here on the isle, Hades is just a blue-haired dude in a leather jacket. And that's the last we see of Hades. For a little while, because Mal has made it to senior year. Welcome back to Auradon Prep graduating class of 2019. It is actually not clear what year it is in Auradon, but Escape to the Isle of the Lost and Descendants 3 both premiered in 2019. So it is in 2019 that Mal and her friends graduate. All except for Carlos, who has always been 1 year behind the rest. Carlos is a junior who never gets to see his own graduation day. Mal starts to see what it's like to be a ruler of Auradon. The story of Descendants starts out with Maleficent plotting a plan so that she could rule side by side with Mal. Now, Mal is by the side of the true ruler, King Benjamin, no longer a prince. And now, Mal is Auradon's hero and protector. Being good is so much harder than being bad. As Ben's lady, Mal is now part of the royal council, the other members being Ben's parents and fairy godmother. She's the first to arrive to her first council meeting. The other members of the council have the idea for Mal to make some diplomatic visits around the various kingdoms of Auradon. She notices the Isle of the Lost, lonely and forgotten, is missing from the list. Once again, lonely and forgotten. The fairy godmother ends the meeting, saying they'll discuss it at the next one. Fairy godmother is the one who placed the dome barrier over the isle. Nobody's forgotten about the people there more than her. Nobody remembers the people on the isle more than Evie, not even Mal. Out of the 4 main VKs, I'd say Carlos is the most afraid of his VP, villain parent. This is clear from the very first book, but Evie is the most afraid of the isle itself. She was castle-bound from 6 years old, after all. Her first day of real school on the Isle was her 16th birthday. You can hear more about that in my first video of this series, if you haven't yet. For as much as Evie talks as someone who knows the Isle well, her line from A Good World comes to mind, I had forgotten how bad the city's drainage system is. Evie doesn't actually know the Isle as her peers do. She doesn't know Mal's and Jay's favorite haunts. She doesn't know all of Carlos's hiding places to get away from his mom. She knows her castle. That's it. And the Forgotten Isle, where Maleficent's original castle is. Evie only got a glimpse of what it's like on the Isle. And that glimpse was enough for her to know the children of the villains deserve better. Doug helps her out with a recruitment strategy. Doug is the boy who so confidently asked Evie out in the first movie. After admitting he was technically stalking her, he peacocked himself to ask her out. The first time I watched Descendants, my dad had asked, how did he suddenly make himself taller? I found this so funny that I tweeted it with the actor of Doug tagged, and it was one of the many tweets about Descendants that Zachary Gibson had interacted with. It was Doug's confidence that had made him so tall. But he fails to carry that confidence in Descendants 2 and into Descendants 3. Not only did he suspect Evie of cheating on him, a trope that actually left a bad taste in my mouth, but after a year and a half of being in a relationship with her, he still hasn't told Evie that he loves her. As a villain's kid who never knew love before, it's no wonder Evie is so unsure when she sings about it in Descendants 3. Although thanks to that song, we know that Shakespeare is canon in Ordon. Though it isn't clear to Evie that Doug loves her, it is pretty clear in Descendants 3 that he is living with her, as he is her expenses manager in her business, something we see in Descendants 2. We see in Escape from the Isle of the Lost that Doug purchases the starter castle with Evie. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Where we are now, Doug is simply making passing comments about his freshly long hair, while Evie assures him that he is the prince of her heart. And with his help, she will recruit more kids from the Isle to sign up for the initiative to bring them home. Thus far, they only have a sign up from Dizzy, who was invited to do so at the end of Descendants 2. So Evie runs to tell Mal and Ben about the initiative. On the way in, she runs into Carlos. Carlos, son of Cruella de Vil, is the first friend Evie made after leaving her castle for the first time. She gave him his first pillow. She loves him as she would a little brother. Carlos is a year younger than Evie and the rest of their gang. He was in some of Evie's classes back in Dragon Hall, the school on the Isle, and he attended remedial goodness class with them in the first Descendants. But at Oregon Prep, Carlos is a junior while his friends are in their last year. Carlos has one more year to be the big man on campus, maybe even the class king, once his friends are gone. But he will miss them. He's already starting to miss them. They're all too busy to hang out. They can't even grab a quick dinner together. And Carlos does not want to go with Evie to see Doug's emo band. It's just a touch too emo for him. But when Evie invites him along to tell Mal about the recruitment strategy, he doesn't hesitate to go along, even as he doesn't want to actually go to the Isle. As I reread these books for my series, I write down notes of significance for my script. Directly under the note about Carlos tagging along with Evie, it just says he wants to bring peanut butter. But then I remember the first Descendants movie and his first taste of peanut butter in the limo. He also finds a blanket in the limo that he wants to keep. This moment has always stuck out to me because while Jay only wants it because Carlos does, Carlos has never had a blanket before. When Evie brings him the pillow, he so shyly asks if she has a blanket to go with it. Of course, she was going to give him one, but the events of the first Descendants take place directly after the events of Isle of the Lost, and so she never has time. Carlos gets what is probably his first blanket ever in his dorm room at Oregon Prep. We don't get to see the boys walk in as we do Mal and Evie, and we know that Evie falls in love with their dorm room. We do see Carlos lying on his bed the night before Ben's coronation, on top of the blanket, as if he feels he doesn't deserve to use it. It's a small clip as Mal sings her reprise of If Only, not even 5 seconds long, I'm sure. But having read the book before, knowing Carlos's backstory, it means so much to me. And Carlos knows that trying peanut butter for the first time would mean so much to the kids on the Isle. And of course he knows that none of this can happen without Jay. Jay is being looked at by attorney scouts for college. At the end of Descendants 3, Jay tells Gil that he's going to take a gap year and he wants to go see icebergs and jungles with him. In my previous video, I mentioned that Gil is written to be a ladies' man in Rise of the Isle of the Lost, but we never really see that in the movies. Harry fawns over Uma while Gil fawns over fresh fruit. As I wrote that last script, I imagined Gil to be asexual. Maybe it's the asexual in me, but y'all really have fun in the comments dissecting Gil as bisexual. I appreciate that theory just as much. It is Pride Month, after all. In Escape from the Isle of the Lost, Jay is so unsure of what he wants. He feels his Aradon friends pulling him in one direction, while his heart is always pulled in the direction of his Isle friends. Hence his ending with Gil. Hence his immediate agreement to help his friends tell Ben about the recruitment strategy. So immediate we don't even see it. We just see Jay there with them. The first paragraph in the immediate next chapter states, he, Ben, was surprised but happy to find Mal, Evie, Jay, and Carlos talking excitedly to each other as they made their way to the front of his desk. As we know from the first Descendants movie, bringing the kids from the aisle has always been Ben's idea. The last line of the first book is one of his first lines in the movie. He tells his parents, "We start with a few at first." Mal and her friends were never the only kids he wanted to bring over, but he did allow Mal to distract him a little from bringing more kids over. We see that in the beginning of the second Descendants with the cameras in their faces and the pressure on Mal to be the Lady of Oradon. It isn't till the end of the movie when Evie asks if she can get him a list that he starts taking it seriously again. But never as seriously as Evie. He doesn't even realize Dizzy is the only kid who's signed up. But with Mal and her friends telling him about the recruitment strategy with ideas to make posters, he tries to take it a little more seriously. Still, Evie needs more from him. She needs his permission to go to the aisle to talk to the kids herself, for all of them to talk to the kids. Ben is hesitant, and it's clear why. The last time they went to the aisle, they got Ben kidnapped and tied to the mast of a pirate ship. Fairy Godmother also doesn't like students traveling during the school year. A funny detail to be added after all the traveling we know Mal and her friends have done throughout their time in Oradon. Sure, she was never told about Ben's kidnapping in the previous movie, but she did know about their travels in the previous book. Maybe Ben was just making excuses to keep Mal away from the aisle, or maybe it was just a mistaken detail. It isn't the only detail about Fairy Godmother that doesn't quite fit in this book. Either way, Mal brings up the idea of including it as her diplomatic visits, the one the Royal Council brought up with her at their meeting, the one with the list that the aisle wasn't even on. After all, Mal is sure he'd agreed with her at that meeting that the aisle should be on the list, and even though he never really did, he does agree to bringing it up at the next one. But first, they have their school duties to tend to. Carlos might not be in the graduating class with his friends, but that doesn't mean he's going to let it stop him from taking part in the graduation. Along with Jane, he is the lead junior in charge of plotting the perfect year for the seniors. They're in charge of the senior events, the graduation, and a special surprise for their friends. Jay is looking at his options, college or pro tourney. Lonnie is going pro. After all, her brother already has. She presses Jay to attend the pro scouts, but his friends always come first. Evie is working on caps and gowns for the graduating class. With the funds from her fellow students, she will finally be able to afford the one thing she's been saving up for. But she can't stop thinking about the aisle kids, or talking about them, pestering Mal. Mal brings it up to Ben again. She wants a day when all the kids of the aisle can choose to come to Oradon. Ben agrees on a few kids, but he isn't convinced it's safe for all the villain kids. Because of Uma, who is a kid of the villain herself? He allows Mal and her friends to go to the aisle to recruit villain kids. And after he settles things at one of his kingly meetings, Aquata, the mermaid, brings up Uma. I wonder if this mermaid is the mom of Arabella, the AK from the previous book who caused all the trouble that allowed Uma to even be in Oradon right now? Mal and her friends are ready to go back to the Isle of the Lost, but first, they have their senior quest. The senior quest is a huge scavenger hunt put together by the junior class. Jay and Carlos are the leads on it, of course. The senior VKs each pair up with an AK, Jay and Lonnie, Evie and Doug, and of course, Mal and Ben, who are late. Mal and Ben have to finish up their Royal Council meeting in which Fairy Godmother gives her blessing for the trip to the Isle. It is clear that Fairy Godmother has no idea what Senior Quest is, even as Ben and Belle reminisce on theirs. Wasn't Oradon founded after Beast and Belle married? Didn't they meet one another in early adulthood? Disney released a graphic not long after Descendants Rise of Red was announced. Merlin Academy, with the faces of both heroes and villains as teenagers. I guess we'll see what all this means when the next Descendants comes out. Back to the senior quest, it's Chad who crosses the finish line by being the only one to kiss a prince off the scavenger hunt list. He kisses his own hand, while the three girls give Ben kisses. A king. On the Isle, Mal and her friends go back to her old home, the Bargain Castle. They can't go to their hideout anymore. You know, the one we see Mal spray painting the walls of in the second movie, the one we were never really given any story on. That's been taken over by Harry Hook and his wharf rats. So out on the balcony, Mal tries to make an announcement about their recruitment strategy. The people of the Isle look up at her in fear, thinking she's Maleficent. Even after she assures them she isn't, they don't really care. Up next is the school, but the kids there are afraid of Mal too. It seems that the anti-heroes club from the second book is no longer around. Even as it was mentioned earlier, Freddie is still around. Remember her, Dr. Facilier's daughter, the VK from Wicked World? She keeps in contact with Dr. Facilier's younger daughter, the VK we meet in Escape from the Isle of the Lost and Descendants 3. I don't understand the magic of the Isle of the Lost. From the first book, it was made clear there is no way to use magic underneath the dome. Magic has slipped into the Isle in nearly every book through a quick opening of the dome. In the second movie, when Mal tricks Uma with a 3D printed wand, Uma fully believes the magic works under the dome. Here, in the third movie, Celia, Dr. Facilier's younger daughter, tells Mal that bad magic won't work on the Isle. Like that's a band-aid solution for the slip-up in Descendants 2. Still, I don't know how Freddie and Celia get messages to one another. One girl is in Ordon, one girl is on the Isle, with no magic, no Wi-Fi, no way out. Dr. Facilier allows the 4 BKs to use the school as a stomping ground to recruit more villain kids, on the condition that Celia is one of the 4 kids that gets to go to Ordon. They agree. After all, Celia's not that bad, is she? She might just be a little bit good. The 4 kids split up to find teachers who will help them with the recruitment plan. While Mal catches up with Lady Tremaine, Jay finds no success with Coach Gaston, and Carlos apologizes to Madame Mim for sending her back to the Isle in the second book. Celia, having overheard them in her dad's office, catches Evie on the way to her teacher. Celia talks her into a reading. Evie's past and present cards speak correctly on the life she's lived, the one she's living now. It's Evie's future card that speaks of darkness and danger. But Celia won't tell her how to prevent it without the price of a second reading. To Evie, Celia is nothing more than a little trickster. For someone who is working so hard to bring Isle kids to Oridon, she sure is judgmental about the Isle kids. But that isn't going to stop Celia from proving she belongs on Oridon too. In Descendants 3, we hear Celia admit that she is Hades' errand girl. This remains true in the movie's pre-dating book. On her way to report to duty, she hears something a little suspicious. Uma. You didn't think Uma wouldn't be in this book, did you? For all Ben's and Mal's worrying about her? Uma has found a way back on the Isle through cracks in the dome, deep underground, where Hades is trying to find his own way off the Isle. They agree to help one another with the condition that Uma gets to be the one to beat Mal. To Uma, Mal is the girl who abandoned the Isle, the girl who still acts as she owns it, even as she ignores it. But Uma knows Mal is on the Isle now. It's her plan to lure her in, to get the barrier remote off of her. She can feel the magic. She felt it on Ordon. She felt it in Rise of the Isle of the Lost when she fought Mal for the trident. She feels it in the cracks of Hades' underground home. Even if just the tiniest bit, it sparks in his ember. Hades tells Uma to leave Mal to him, and Uma leaves through the cracks in his underground. But not without being heard. Celia is a sneaky little thing, and eavesdropped in on the entire thing, and she won't get caught by them. She runs. She runs all the way to Dragon Hall. She runs straight into Dizzy, her friend. Celia wants to tell somebody about Uma's plan. Dizzy would be as good as anybody, but she doesn't get the chance. She considers telling Mal instead, but when Celia approaches the 4 VKs while they're having lunch, Mal just brushes her off. They have to get ready for their roundtable meeting with Dragon Hall students. It's not much of a meeting. 4 VKs show up. Jenny Gothel, who is actually looking for the World Domination Seminar. Anthony Tremaine, who was sent by his grandmother and gets his wallet back that Jay stole years ago. LeFew Du, who was sent by Coach Gaston and is scared of Bardon, and Mad Maddie, the girl who betrayed Mal and returned to the Isle of the Lost. The 4 VKs aren't too interested in the meeting. When they're asked about magic on the Isle, Mal explains that it's regulated. For everyone but her, it seems. Evie, who has never used any magic besides her mirror, explains the point is to learn to be good without magic. The kids leave without signing up for the initiative. Mal believes they're wasting their time. Evie will not give up. When the BKs split up once again for their separate tasks, Mal starts thinking about Celia. She wonders if she shouldn't have brushed her off. She wonders if maybe Uma really has come back. As she heads to Ursula's fish and chip shop, she keeps assuring she has the barrier remote, suddenly aware she is carrying the entire safety of Auradon. Ursula hasn't seen Uma since she watched her daughter lose to Mal on the Auradon news channel. Mal heads to, well, she doesn't know. She runs into Carlos, who finds himself worried about Mal. She doesn't know what she's doing. She doesn't know why. As she walks away, he continues testing his invention. He gets a text through to Jane from the aisle. Mal runs into Harriet's Hook next, the sister of Harry, hanging out in Mal's hideout, and CJ, who is on Auradon. Harriet has to point Mal in the correct direction. Where is she going? She doesn't know, but she's sure all of this has to do with Uma. And then she finds herself face to face with the villain, wearing a different face. Dizzy is before her, wearing Uma's necklace and speaking in Uma's voice. Harry and Gil are with her. Mal's friends find her, following the glow of her footprints, just in time to watch her dive off the pier. She can't swim, remember? Jay dives in after her. He's blaming himself for not protecting her. He's supposed to be the one protecting her. It might not be romantic, but Jay has more love for Mal than anybody else does. The water is crystal clear, and yet Jay can't see her anywhere. As he tries to search, a school of fish surround him. Something doesn't want him to find Mal, something magical. If there's magic on the Isle, there's magic in their mystical items. Evie has the idea to check the magic mirror, the real one in her castle. What's left of it, anyway. While Evie and the boys head to her castle, Celia decides she's going to take matters into her own hands. She actually does want to go to Auradon so badly, so she's not going to allow her chance to be placed in jeopardy. Her cards say there is no future on the Isle after all. Where are her cards? She must have dropped them, somewhere in the underground tunnels. As she shifts her flashlight around to look for them, her battery runs out. As the light fades away, she notices another light through the cracks of the underground walls. And just like magic, her cards fly into her hands because it is magic. Celia uses that magic to read a real fortune in her cards. The Magician, the Queen of Swords, the Hermit. They all tell her one thing. She has the magic within her to stop this spell, a spell to stop a spell. Celia calls upon her shadow. Commanding her shadow, she seeps the darkness into every crack of light in the underground. She closes up the cracks. She snuffs out the magic. Even as she wished for Dizzy to help her, Celia did it all on her own. Mal never should have underestimated her. Mal finds herself at the bottom of the sea, able to breathe. She hears her three friends screaming for her, but she knows it's Uma that wants her here. She finds herself suddenly on a pirate ship, looking straight at her. Only it's more like she's looking in a mirror with Uma as her reflection. She sees Uma in every bubble surrounding her. She really feels the magic around her. Even after everything she's been through, after every good thing she's seen, Mal still refuses to see the good in Uma. But they are the same, aren't they? Two villain kids who want freedom for the rest of the BKs. Freedom, happiness, love. Uma transforms into the octopus version of herself, lifting Mal up and reaching for the barrier remote. Mal transforms into her dragon. I wonder where the remote is now. Dragons don't have pockets. They chase one another for a moment until they are back again as humans on the pirate ship, swords in hand. They fight. Nothing as epic as It's Going Down in Descendants 2. Mal forces Uma to drop the sword. Uma disappears. She stands at a door, screaming for Uma to face her. Evie screams at Mal to not open that door. After pretending to be her mother to get into her home, Evie asks the magic mirror to show them where Mal is. They see her standing in front of the door. Mal opens the door. Evie goes inside the mirror. Mal escapes, but now Evie is in Uma's clutches. Carlos keeps a hold on Evie. Jay keeps a hold on Carlos. The three of them are stronger together, and Evie is back in her castle, and none of them know what just happened. Mal doesn't know what happened either. She's back on the pier. Dizzy is back with the seashell necklace. Uma's voice is back in Dizzy, and they break the necklace. It is Celia who returned the BKs to where they belong by snuffing out the magic. She can be good too. just as Uma, just as all the villain kids on the Isle. Mal can still be bad, and if you think about it, she can be the villain of Descendants 3. It is Mal's idea to shut down the initiative, any visits to the Isle at all. If I am counting correctly, Mal has been back to the Isle at least 7 times before she makes this decision, and an 8th after. The rules of Auradon don't seem to apply to her. She continues to use her own magic all the way through the final film. She isn't queen yet, she isn't above everything. I understand that Mal is still young. Her frontal cortex hasn't fully developed yet. She allows herself to be manipulated into making a decision that isn't hers to make. As king, Ben should be the one stepping up. Ben is just getting ready to step across the platform, to graduate with the rest of his friends. Even Audrey, who is supposed to be enrolled in summer school, and of course, Ben is voted class king. Mal is most improved, Jay is best athlete. Evie wins the award for diligence, and Carlos's big surprise is that he set the whole thing up for the VKs to watch on the Isle. Almost all of the VKs end up applying for the initiative, including, of course, Celia. When Mal said goodbye to her as they left the Isle, she noticed the girl didn't have a shadow, and Carlos doesn't have time. He plans to mentor the new VKs during his senior year, but he never makes it there. Disney Plus released the Small Descendants animation in 2021. It's about the chaotic planning of Mal's wedding. But the 3 remaining 4 VKs take a moment to honor Carlos, as we have all honored Cameron. In the end of the animation, Mal gets married with Hades by her side, her dad. In Isle of the Lost, the first book of De La Cruz's series, it is made clear that Mal's dad is a human, making Mal only half fairy. Only half human. It is why she's so soft, stopping at the age of 5 to help a goblin pick up fallen apples. It is why she only has half of her true name, Maleficent. After all, you're only half of me. And in Descendants 3, she's half God, half Hades. This is where Mal's story ends. Now we have a new story to look forward to. Reds, the daughter of the Queen of Hearts. But that never means we have to stop looking back.
I just wanna see how beautiful you are. Anywhere I can follow you. Say something, I'm giving up on you. And I swallow my pride. You're the one I love. I'm saying goodbye. Say something, I'm giving up on you. I just wanna see how beautiful you are.
My name is Amy. Yes, ma'am.
Sometimes it's heaven sent, then we head back to hell again. We kiss, then we make up on the way. I hang up, you call, we rise, then we fall, and we feel like just walking away.
Sing John Legend.
As our love advances, we take second chances. Though it's not a fantasy, I still want you to stay. We're just ordinary people.
Hello, I'm Luke, and you are?
Way too old for you.
Someone is in a bad mood.
My mom's counting on me. I can't let her down.
Nice, Connor. Want another one.
I don't know how to start girl talk.
I am levitating as we speak.
You're not, though.
Really? What if I'm levitating the house and all it contains with me? So you just can't tell.
Okay, ravishing and taken. Just in case anyone was confused.
Hold on. We will fall for standing and watching. All this silence, dear Lord, are we numb where we going right? No, not later.